Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Boomi how-to. In this video, I'm going to run through an accelerated sort of course on how to set up a intermediate API uh, that is basic authenticated on your shared web server. So this is just using an Atom runtime. Um, it's going to be installing an Atom, configuring the shared web server, creating a process, a simple process, deploying the process, and then calling it on Postman. And we're going to do that from start to finish. Um, so we can just hop right into it. To get started, you'll need a AtomSphere account. You also need Postman. You can make the call from Boomi for this example. We're just going to be doing it in Postman. And you're going to need admin access or be able to run the installer as administrator for the Atom installer. All right, so the first step though is going to be installing the Atom itself. This is going to be the device that basically runs your processes um, or handles the requests that come into Boomi from a listener process. Firstly, we're going to go to services and then integration. From here, we're going to go to manage, Atom management. Then we're going to go to new and environment. And we're going to make a test environment. We're going to name it test. And the classification is also going to be test. And we're going to save it. You need to create an environment first because the atoms are actually attached to an environment. And when you deploy a component, it doesn't deploy to an atom. It deploys to a environment, which then the environment distributes the components to the atom. But with the test environment created, we can create an atom. We'll do new atom. For this example, we're going to be creating a local atom. The reason we're going to do local is because in part two, this will be setting up a gateway for the advanced API type. And the Atom clouds, at least the public Atom clouds, do not support gateways at the moment. So for local, we'll do a Windows 64 bit. That's what I'm running. That's what my system is. We'll expand the security options and generate a token and copy that. We're going to need that for the install. It will act as basically our password, and it's only good for one install. With that, we'll download the installer. Gonna have to run this as admin, so let me pull it up. Okay, so here's the wizard. Go to next. We'll choose token because that's what we're going to be using. We'll paste our token value we just copied from the Atom setup. Next, we're going to name our Atom. One second, I did not choose a name. Let me restart that. Just generate another token. Okay, so we'll go to token, paste that in here, and we'll name our Atom local test Atom. We'll click on next. We'll choose our test environment to attach it to. I'm okay with that being installed here. Then we can click through that. Okay, with that, the installer is complete. We can close this and refresh our page. We'll see our local test Atom has been created and attached to the test environment. The next step will be configuring our shared web server to accept intermediate calls. So we'll click on the name of the local test Atom, and then we'll go to the shared web server tab. From here, we'll see that it's already set to intermediate at default. There's two other types, there's basic and advanced, but we'll be doing intermediate for now. Um, we'll have the listening port configured. We're going to set the authentication type to basic. You can keep the port at 9090. I know something else is already using 9090 on my computer, so I'll do 9099. And for the external host, we're going to make that local host. Cool. And then we'll click on the user management tab. We'll add a user. We'll name him test, generate a token, and we will save that. And just like that, your shared web server is set up. This is going to be the user we make the call for. This will be the username, this whole value here, and the password will be the token. We'll be calling it on localhost port 9099. You can do 9090, it's all up to you. And we'll be using, yeah, we configured the local host on the external host field here. Basically, if you're using like a load balancer or anything in front of it, like another network device, you would put the URL there and as the external host, and that would be how you would call it that way from like that local or that network device. But for this example, since we're just calling it directly from our computer or our machine, we'll just keep it at localhost. Okay, with that created, just save it again. We can go to the next part, which is building a simple listener process. I already had it here, but I'll start it from scratch. We'll go to the plus button. We'll do process and create. For the connector, we'll do a web services server. Keep it at the listen action, and we'll push the plus button next to operation. This operation is basically how you want to call it. So the operation type is going to be a get, so it's going to expect the get method when we're calling it in Postman. Um, we're going to call this the hello world operation. We're going to set the object to hello world. And you can see this filled out the simple URL path. This is the endpoint we will use in Postman to call it. The expected input type will keep it none, and the output type will do single data. And we can save and close it. And then click OK. Next, we'll add a message shape. And inside the message shape, we'll just say hello world. This will be what is returned to the client when we call it. And then we'll add a return document shape. This is the shape that actually tells the process to return a document to the client or data to the client. For this little warning sign, we can just confirm them. It's just allowing simultaneous executions, which isn't enabled by default. You usually want that as listeners, so because multiple calls are usually made at the same time. So we'll just enable that. We will save it. We're not going to be able to test it because it's a listener process. They're only available when you deploy them. So we'll just go ahead and deploy this. Click create package component. Before we do that, actually, we'll name our process. We'll name it Hello World Process, just to make it easier to find. And we'll save it. Create a package component. It automatically chooses the process we created here. We can add details such as versioning and notes. I'll keep that blank for now. All right, once that's created, we can deploy the package component. We'll choose the environment that we want to deploy it to. In this case, so it's going to be test. We'll choose our version, which is the package component. We'll review it and deploy. Cool. And with that, we deployed our process. So now it should be callable from outside of Boomi using like Postman or something like that. So next we're gonna actually make the call from Postman to the API. First, we'll go back to Atom management. So manage Atom management. We'll click on our local test Atom and go to shared web server. We're gonna copy the base URL for API request. We'll open up Postman and we'll use that here. So localhost 9099 for me. Once we have that, we'll just go back to the build tab, click on the operation again, and we'll copy this simple URL path. Make sure there's no trailing value. All right, so we have the URL constructed. Next, we're going to go back to the Atom management, local test Atom, shared web server, user management, and we're going to use the user we just created, which is the test one. We're going to copy this value below the username and use that as the actual username. In Postman, we'll go to authorization, basic auth, and paste that as a username. For the password, we will be using a token. And make sure the method's at get. Send the request. And we got a 200 OK with hello world. So that is it for this video. We just to recap, we created an Atom, uh, configured the shared web server on the Atom to accept request on localhost on port 9099 or 9090, depending on whatever you want to do. We created a simple process, deployed the process, and then called the API from Postman. Stay tuned for part two, where we do this with a gateway and a advanced API and an API component. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day.